This is Heliox, where evidence meets empathy. Independent, moderated, timely, deep, gentle, clinical, global, and community conversations about things that matter. Breathe easy. We go deep and lightly surface the big ideas.
All right, diving right in today, folks, to the Canadian Liberal leadership debate. We've got articles, transcripts, commentaries galore, ready to go.
A lot to unpack.
Yeah, a real mountain of information, right?
Yeah.
But that's what we do here on the Deep Dive. We dig deep, and today, well, we're going beyond what was said. We're looking for what was left unsaid.
Stuff they didn't want us to notice.
Exactly, reading between the lines a bit. Now, for anyone who hasn't been following every twist and turn, we've got 4 heavy hitters vying for the top spot. Gould, Bizz, Freeland, and Carney. And the winner, well, they don't just get to be prime minister. They get the lovely challenge of dealing with a newly invigorated President Trump.
Yeah, he's back with a vengeance, isn't he?
Oh, absolutely. And all the candidates seem to acknowledge that, that Trump is the big unavoidable issue looming over everything. But it was really interesting to see how their strategies for dealing with him kind of diverged.
He did, didn't they? I mean, you had Bizz, with all of his trade deal expertise, basically framing it as a shakedown, advocating for a firm stance.
Yeah, that Canada won't be bullied approach. But is that really feasible in today's world? I mean, could it backfire, make things even worse?
Totally. It's a gamble, for sure. Then on the other side, you've got Freeland pushing for those strategic alliances,
Right. And let's not forget that bold proposition. A 100% tariff on Teslas to hit Trump where it hurts, right in the electric car ego.
Ouch.
Right. But would it even work? Or would we just end up in a full-blown trade war?
Yeah, that's a risk, no doubt about it.
And then there's Gould, all about rallying Canadians, reminding everyone how much the U.S. relies on us.
Appealing to that sense of national unity.
Absolutely. But does that actually translate into, real leverage in negotiations?
It does feel a bit like hoping for the best, doesn't it?
It does. A bit like crossing your fingers and hoping Trump just sees things our way.
And then there's Carney, the economist in the bunch, stressing that a strong economy is our best line of defense, but also acknowledging the need for those alliances Freeland was talking about.
Yeah, a bit of a combination approach.
Right, a bit of both worlds. But what I found really intriguing was how he, just casually slipped in that he'd already started the security clearance process.
Oh, yeah. Almost like a subtle dig at Polyev, right? Like, I'm ready to step in on day one, are you?
Exactly. A very strategic move, highlighting a potential vulnerability in a rival's campaign.
Interesting how this whole Trump issue reveals so much about how each candidate sees Canada's role globally,
Yeah, it's like a litmus test.
Are we the tough negotiator, the shrewd collaborator, or the scrappy underdog?
And who knows which approach would actually work with someone like Trump?
That's the million-dollar question, right? And speaking of questions, it's what they didn't address that really stood out to me.
The strategic silence on certain issues.
Exactly, like how none of them, not a single one, addressed the long-term impacts of the pandemic on our healthcare workers. I mean, 1 in 5 doctors in the UK are out because of long COVID. Canada can't be immune to that, can it?
Right. It's like they're pretending the pandemic is over, but we're still dealing with the fallout.
A huge blind spot, especially if we're aiming for, a truly robust healthcare system.
Absolutely. And it's not just long COVID either. They all talked about healthcare broadly, but not a word about hospital-acquired infections. Ventilation standards, masking protocols, those things could protect staff and patients alike.
You'd think that would be top of mind, wouldn't you?
You would, especially given everything we've learned over the past few years. And remember how they kind of skimmed over AI, touched on it, but never really went deep on how it's poised to completely reshape our economy?
Yeah, the potential for robots to, take over blue-collar jobs.
It's not sci-fi anymore. It's happening right now.
It makes you wonder if they're truly prepared for the future, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And all that focus on energy solutions for climate change. But they completely overlooked how climate change is already impacting food production.
Yeah, like it's a future problem, but it's hitting us right now.
The droughts, floods, supply chains going haywire. This is a reality, folks.
And think about the emphasis on, traditional energy sources. Nuclear reactors, pipelines, those are long-term projects.
And what about fusion? Deep geothermal, those barely got a mention.
Right. It's like they're fixated on these large-scale solutions, but neglecting the potential of these emerging technologies.
Hold on, didn't Bizz actually advocate for new gas pipelines?
He did.
That seems a bit, well, counterintuitive given Canada's climate goals.
It does, doesn't it? And no one even acknowledged that potential contradiction. Like, they're focusing on immediate energy needs without a clear plan for long-term sustainability.
So we've got contradictions, we've got unanswered questions, and a whole lot of what feels like kicking the can down the road.
It's a mixed bag, for sure.
And on top of all that, they barely touched on some pretty crucial stuff. Housing crisis, mental health services, indigenous reconciliation, the broader geopolitical landscape beyond just Trump.
Yeah, it's like they cherry-pick the talking points.
Sticking to the familiar, playing it safe.
But sometimes the most important information lies beneath the surface, doesn't it?
It does, and that's where these Heliox frameworks come in. They're like a secret decoder ring for understanding the unspoken assumptions, the potential consequences of what the candidates are proposing.
They're these frameworks designed for understanding scientific and societal trends, but they actually provide a really fascinating lens for analyzing this debate.
So we're talking about like breaking down traditional boundaries, embracing complexity and uncertainty, valuing lived experience.
Well, exactly.
These are big concepts.
But think of them as tools, tools for thinking about how systems interact and adapt, how knowledge is shaped by context, how to make decisions in a world where we can't predict everything with perfect certainty.
So we're not talking about abstract theories here. These are applicable to real-world situations like, well, this debate.
Absolutely, and you might be surprised to see how some of these concepts actually showed up in the candidates' arguments, even if they didn't explicitly mention the frameworks themselves. A bit, right. But the real question is, are they thinking about these things deeply enough? Or are they missing the transformative potential of these ideas?
I guess we'll have to dive deeper to find out. Yep. All right, you've definitely piqued my curiosity here. These Heliox frameworks sound pretty fascinating, but I'll be honest, I'm still trying to wrap my head around how they actually work in practice. Let's start with that boundary dissolution. You mentioned breaking down those rigid categories we tend to use, right? Can you give me a concrete example? How does that apply to, something like this debate?
Absolutely. Think about how they talked about the Canadian economy, mostly focusing on those national level policies, right?
Yeah, the big picture stuff.
But what if we applied boundary dissolution and thought about it differently? What if instead of, separate provincial economies, we envisioned a single interconnected Canadian economy?
So breaking down those provincial barriers and creating a more unified approach. Okay, I'm starting to see how this framework can shift perspectives.
Exactly, and it's not just about economics either. Think about climate change. The debate mostly focused on federal policies, right?
Yeah, the top-down approach.
But what about empowering local communities to take action?
Giving them more agency.
Imagine a scenario where indigenous knowledge is combined with, cutting-edge green technology and community-driven initiatives. That's boundary dissolution in action.
Wow, it's like weaving together a tapestry of different approaches instead of working in silos.
Precisely. And think about how boundary dissolution could transform healthcare. Instead of treating mental and physical health as, separate things,
Which we often do, yeah?
we could acknowledge their interconnectedness. Imagine a system that seamlessly integrates traditional healing practices with modern medicine.
That's a really interesting concept, recognizing the wisdom and efficacy of both.
Right. It challenges that either thinking that can be so limiting.
Instead of finding those points of connection, seeing the whole as greater than the sum of its parts.
Exactly. And that brings us to the next framework, adaptive complexity.
Okay, lay it on me.
It's all about understanding how systems evolve in response to change. Think of it like this. The world is a constantly shifting landscape, right? New technologies emerge, unexpected challenges pop up, and the old ways of doing things, well, they just don't cut it anymore.
So how do we apply that to this debate? Did the candidates even acknowledge that need for, adaptability?
To some extent, yeah. Remember how Bizz emphasized the need to modernize the government?
Yeah, he was all about streamlining things, making them more efficient.
That's recognizing that our institutions need to adapt to keep pace with the times. And Gould's suggestions about a basic income and updating the social safety net, that's recognizing that the old systems might not be enough in a rapidly changing world.
Okay, so they're acknowledging the need for change, but are they thinking about it deeply enough?
That's the question, isn't it? They kind of miss some opportunities to truly embrace adaptive complexity. For example, No one talked about decentralizing power, empowering communities to find local solutions.
So it's like spreading the responsibility, making the system more resilient.
Exactly. Imagine community-led energy projects, localized food production, or citizen science initiatives. These grassroots efforts are often way more agile and responsive to change than those top-down approaches.
Makes sense. They're closer to the ground, seeing the needs firsthand.
Right. And another missed opportunity was the lack of discussion around, lifelong learning and reskilling programs. With AI and automation disrupting the job market, we need to equip people with the skills to adapt and thrive in this new landscape.
So it's not just about adapting the systems, it's about empowering individuals to adapt as well. I'm really starting to see the value of these frameworks. This is great stuff. Okay, what about embodied knowledge? That one's really intriguing.
This framework challenges the idea that knowledge is, purely abstract or theoretical. It emphasizes the importance of lived experience, intuition, the wisdom that comes from actually engaging with the world.
So valuing the knowledge that comes from our senses, our interactions, our personal journeys.
Exactly, and I think there were some subtle hints of this in the debate. Gould talked about connecting with Canadians, understanding their priorities. That's valuing the lived experiences of everyday people, right?
Yeah, getting out of the Ottawa bubble.
And Freeland mentioned those young tech workers, eager to contribute. That speaks to the passion and practical knowledge that comes from, well, embodied experience.
But did they truly grasp the potential of this framework?
Not sure about that. No one talked about how insights from, say, Indigenous communities or frontline workers could inform policy decisions.
Especially in areas like healthcare or climate change, right?
Exactly. These are the folks on the ground witnessing the issues firsthand, yet their voices are often marginalized.
It's like we're missing out on this treasure trove of knowledge and wisdom by not tapping into those diverse perspectives.
Precisely. Embodied knowledge is about recognizing that knowledge isn't just something you read in a textbook. It's lived, it's felt, it's embedded in the fabric of our communities.
Okay, on to the last one. Quantum-like uncertainty. Help me out here. How does this apply to something as, concrete as a political debate?
It's all about recognizing the limits of prediction and control. We live in a complex world. Unexpected events happen all the time. And the future, well, it's not a fixed destination. It's a landscape of probabilities.
So instead of trying to control every outcome, we need to become more comfortable with ambiguity, adapt to those changing circumstances.
You got it. And I think there were glimpses of this in the debate. Carney acknowledged the uncertainty around Trump's actions, focused on what Canada could control.
Yeah, playing the hand we're dealt.
Gould struck a balance between standing up to Trump and engaging with him, recognizing the unpredictable nature of diplomacy.
Yeah, it's a delicate dance.
And even Bizz, he suggested anticipating Trump's moves while preparing counter strategies.
So they're aware of the uncertainty, but are they really integrating it into their thinking? Are they truly prepared for a future that's, well, inherently unpredictable?
That's the key question, isn't it? They missed some chances to really delve into the implications of quantum-like uncertainty. For example, no one talked about the uncertainty inherent in those climate projections, or how AI might disrupt society in ways we can't even imagine yet.
It's like we're trying to plan for a future we can't even fully grasp.
Exactly. That's where flexible, resilient policies become essential.
So it's not just about responding to what we know, but preparing for what we don't know. That's a pretty profound insight.
It is. And in healthcare, there was no mention of probabilistic thinking, which is crucial for managing pandemic risks or dealing with the unknowns of long COVID.
It's like they're trying to apply a deterministic lens to a world that's inherently uncertain.
Right, like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, these Heliox frameworks aren't just about analyzing the past, but also about equipping us to navigate the future more effectively.
That's exactly it. They're tools for thinking about complex systems, embracing change, and making decisions in the face of uncertainty. And what's really fascinating is that while the candidates touched on some of these concepts, they didn't fully explore their transformative potential.
It's almost like they're dipping their toes into these frameworks without fully diving in.
That's a great way to put it. Their visions are pragmatic, but they lack the depth and nuance that these frameworks offer. It makes you wonder, what would happen if they truly embraced these ideas? What kind of Canada could we create if we fully integrated boundary dissolution, adaptive complexity, embodied knowledge, and in quantum-like uncertainty into our thinking, into our policymaking?
That's a question worth pondering, and that's where you come in, dear listener. What stood out to you in this analysis? Which framework resonated most with your own worldview? And most importantly, how do these frameworks make you rethink the challenges and opportunities facing Canada? It's been really eye-opening to, explore these Heliox frameworks in the context of this debate.
Mm.
But I got to be honest, I'm also wondering how these ideas apply to, well, my own life. It feels a bit daunting to think about incorporating adaptive complexity into my grocery list,
I hear you. It can feel a bit abstract at first, but that's the beauty of these frameworks. They're not just for, politicians or academics. They're mental tools that anyone can use to navigate complexity, make decisions, even just see the world a little differently.
Okay, I'm all ears. Let's start with boundary dissolution. How can I actually apply that in my daily life? It can't all be about merging provincial economies, right?
Think about it this way. Do you ever feel like your life is divided into these separate compartments?
Oh, all the time.
Work, family, hobbies, personal growth. They're all connected, but we often treat them like, isolated silos.
Yeah, it's like I'm constantly juggling different roles.
What if instead of separating those areas, you started looking for the connections?
Find the overlaps.
Exactly. Maybe your passion for sustainable living could inspire a new project at work. Or maybe your love of photography could lead to a community project that brings people together.
So it's about finding those unexpected synergies between different parts of my life.
Exactly. Boundary dissolution is about recognizing that interconnectedness of everything, seeing that bigger picture.
A good way to look at it.
Uh-huh.
Okay, now what about adaptive complexity? I'm all for being adaptable, but life throws some pretty crazy curveballs sometimes.
It does. It does. But that's where this framework comes in. Instead of resisting change, what if you embraced it? Saw it as an opportunity to learn and grow.
Turn those lemons into lemonade.
Exactly. Think of it like developing a mental muscle. The more you flex your adaptability, the stronger you become.
So instead of getting overwhelmed by the unexpected, I should see it as a chance to level up.
I like that analogy. It's like a video game, right? And one of the best ways to become more adaptable is to cultivate that growth mindset. Embrace challenges as learning experiences, seek out new information, and never stop being curious.
Always be learning.
Exactly. The more you expand your knowledge and skills, the better equipped you'll be to handle whatever comes your way.
Okay, that makes sense. What about embodied knowledge? I'm really interested in that idea of, integrating intuition and lived experience into decision-making.
This one's all about trusting your gut, We often get so caught up in analyzing data, weighing pros and cons, that we forget to listen to our own inner wisdom.
So it's about finding that balance between logic and intuition.
Exactly. And remember, embodied knowledge is also about learning through experience. Don't be afraid to step outside your comfort zone, try new things, engage with the world through your senses.
Get your hands dirty.
Exactly. Whether it's taking a pottery class, volunteering in your community, or simply spending time in nature. Those experiences will shape your understanding in ways that no textbook can.
It's like that saying, I hear and I forget, I see and I remember, I do and I understand.
Perfectly put. And finally, we have quantum-like uncertainty. This one can be tough to wrap your head around, but I think it's incredibly liberating once you embrace it.
Okay, walk me through it. How do I apply the concept of uncertainty to, my everyday life?
It starts with letting go of that illusion of control. We like to think we can plan everything perfectly, but life rarely goes according to plan, right?
You could say that again.
Embrace the fact that the future is full of possibilities, not certainties.
So surrender to the flow, accept that things might not always go as expected.
Exactly. And instead of getting anxious about the unknown, what if you embraced it? Saw it as a source of adventure and opportunity.
Choose to see the mystery and the possibility.
I like that. And one of the most powerful ways to embody quantum-like uncertainty is to practice mindfulness. Be present in the moment, let go of worries about the past or the future, and trust that you have the resources to navigate whatever comes your way.
This has been such an amazing deep dive. We started with a political debate and ended up with, a whole new set of tools for understanding ourselves and the world around us.
I couldn't agree more. These Heliox frameworks, they're not just about analyzing the past, they're about shaping the future. They offer a powerful reminder that we're all interconnected, that change is inevitable, and that embracing uncertainty can lead to incredible discoveries.
So, dear listener, what will you create? How will you apply these frameworks to live a more resilient, innovative, and fulfilling life? That's something to ponder as we wrap up this episode, The Deep Dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep into the fascinating complexities of our world. Thanks for listening today. 4 recurring narratives underlie every episode: boundary dissolution, adaptive complexity, embodied knowledge, and quantum-like uncertainty. These aren't just philosophical musings, but frameworks for understanding our modern world. We hope you continue exploring our other podcasts, responding to the content, and checking out our related articles at helioxpodcast.substack.com.